My hand hit her shoulder, and it felt like I had pushed against the wall of our classroom instead of a person. That was the moment I knew I had made a terrible mistake, but by then, it was already too late to take it back. The whole room had gone silent a few seconds earlier, right after I said something stupid about her home planet. I will get to that, but I want you to picture this first. 40 students from 12 different worlds, sitting in a classroom on a coalition training station, and every single one of them frozen, staring at me and the girl everyone called the Deathworld girl. Her name was Vela Ashcroft. She was human, like me, which confused a lot of the alien students at first, because most of them assumed all humans were the same. They were wrong. Vela came from a colony called Kuran 9, a place with gravity more than twice what I grew up with, air that could damage your lungs if you were not careful, and native animals that could bite through metal. The coalition had officially warned people not to settle there. People settled there anyway, decades before I was born, and their children grew up learning how to survive in a place that never stopped trying to end them. I grew up on a soft world. Pink sky, gentle gravity, calm weather. I never had to think about survival. I only had to think about homework and friends, and which cafeteria table to sit at. So when Vela sat near me during a lesson on comparative homeworld ecology, I thought I was being friendly by cracking a joke about her planet. I said something like, "Your world sounds like it is actively trying to kill everyone who lives there." She did not laugh. She said quietly that her planet was not trying. It did not care enough to try. That should have told me to stop talking. I did not stop. I said something else. Something about her being wound too tight because of where she came from. I do not fully remember my own words, which tells you how little thought I put into them. What I remember clearly is her hand coming down flat on the desk between us. I remember the sound of the desk cracking under her palm. I remember every head in the room turning toward us at once. Vela looked down at her own hand, like she was surprised by what she had just done. Then she looked up at me, and for 1 second her face was not angry. It looked almost sad. She said sorry, quiet and quick, like she wanted the moment to disappear. I did not let it disappear. I was 17, embarrassed in front of the whole class, and not thinking clearly, so I shoved her. That is the part I am not proud of. My hands hit her shoulders, and she did not move. Not an inch. It was like pushing against a support beam bolted into the floor. That stillness scared me more than anything else could have, so instead of stepping back and calming down, I panicked and threw a punch. She caught it. Not dodged, not blocked with force. She caught my fist between 2 fingers, and her thumb, the way you might catch a ball thrown by a small child. Then she released it, and stepped back, with both hands open and raised, empty, showing me she was not going to hit me. She said my name and told me to stop. I should have listened. Instead, I swung again, and this time her forearm came up to block it. I heard the sound of my own wrist before I felt the pain, a strange half-second where my brain had not yet caught up with what had happened to my body. Then the pain arrived, sharp and enormous, and I went down to the floor holding my arm against my chest. The classroom exploded into noise after that. Teachers pushed through the crowd of students. A classmate from a species that floats when startled actually rose several feet into the air without meaning to. Someone's translator device was shouting the word medical in 6 different languages at once, because it did not know which language the arriving staff would need. It was chaos, and I was at the center of it, curled up on the floor with a wrist that no longer worked properly. Here is the part that shocked everyone, though. It was not the fight. It was what happened after. Vela did not get suspended. She did not get expelled. She was not even given a harsh lecture, which everyone, including me, expected. When the school administrator, a calm alien named Director Osa, pulled up the recorded data from the incident, she found something that nobody in that panicked room had noticed in the moment. Vela's block, the one that broke my wrist, had been logged by her body monitor at only 11% of her available physical output. 11%. Students from Kuran 9 wore basic reflex assist implants as a normal part of growing up there, not as some special military technology, just standard equipment for a world where local wildlife could tear open the metal hull of a transport vehicle without much effort. Vela had been holding back nearly 90% of her strength when she stopped my punch, and it still broke a bone in my arm like a piece of dry wood. Director Osa did not lecture her. She looked, in the strange way that a being with compound eyes can look, unsettled, almost sick with realization. She asked Vela, gently and on the official record, whether she had ever used more than half of her physical strength in her entire life. Vela said no. She said she had never needed to. She said she had been trained since she was old enough to walk, to treat every single physical interaction with another person as something that could kill them if she was not careful, because on her home planet, if she was careless, it usually did. That was the moment the room actually went quiet in a different way. Not the frightened silence from before. This was the silence of understanding. The other students in that classroom, the ones with 4 arms, the ones in exoskeletons, the ones who could float or breathe underwater, or see in complete darkness, had spent their whole lives quietly assuming that humans were the soft, fragile species. The ones who needed protecting on shared missions, the ones who slowed everyone else down. And in one recorded data readout, they learned that the quiet girl who never spoke above a whisper and always sat alone had been holding back enough force to seriously hurt any one of them, every single day, without ever once losing control by accident. I got a cast for my wrist. It would heal in a few weeks, the medical staff told me. Nothing permanent. Vela got something else. She got an apology from me, delivered badly, in the hallway outside the medical bay, while she stared at the floor and told me it was fine, that she was used to people not understanding where she came from. It was not fine though, not really. And over the next few days, something in our class began to shift. The students who used to avoid sitting near Vela out of nervousness started approaching her instead, but now it was out of something closer to respect. A classmate from a species called the Vexari, the same one who had floated into the air during the fight, asked her seriously whether she would be willing to train with him sometime, purely so he could understand what real restraint looked like. Another student, from a heavier gravity world herself, but nowhere near as extreme as Kuran 9, started sitting near Vela at meals, just to watch the careful, controlled way she moved and ate, like there was something worth learning in it. I wanted to understand too, not because I felt guilty, although I did, but because I realized I had misunderstood her completely from the very first day, and I did not like being wrong about someone in a way that had hurt them. A week after the fight, once my cast had settled, and the swelling in my pride had gone down almost as much as the swelling in my wrist, I found Vela sitting alone outside the training hall, watching a group of students practice hand-to-hand drills through the observation window. She did not look up when I sat down a careful distance away. I asked her why she never joined those drills herself. She said it would not be fair to the other students, and also, it would not teach her anything, since she already had to hold back so much of herself just to walk through a normal day. I asked what her life had actually been like on Kuran 9, and for a long moment she did not answer, like she was deciding whether I deserved to know. Then she told me. She said the gravity there was more than double what most humans experience, so every child who grew up on that planet developed thicker bones and denser muscle, almost as a survival requirement, not a choice. She said the atmosphere had pockets of toxic gas that would shift with the wind, so every building had sealed rooms, and every child learned to read air quality monitors before they learned to read books. She said the temperature could swing by 80 degrees between day and night, so nothing outside could be taken for granted. Not the ground, not the air, not even the plants, some of which had developed defenses that could genuinely hurt a person who touched them without protection. And then there were the animals. She described creatures with jaws strong enough to bite through vehicle plating, built that way because the local minerals in the soil made even the plants tough enough to need equally tough teeth to eat them. Every child on Kuran 9, she said, learned self-defense not as a sport or a hobby, but as something closer to breathing. You learned it because the alternative was not surviving long enough to grow up. I asked her if she missed it. She thought about that for a while before answering. She said she missed the sky at dusk, when the toxic gas pockets would catch the light in strange colors that nowhere else in the galaxy quite matched. She said she missed her family, who were still there, still living the only way they knew how. But she said she did not miss the fear, the constant quiet calculation running in the back of her mind every single moment of every single day, checking distances, checking her own strength, checking whether the person standing near her understood how easily she could hurt them without meaning to. She told me that coming to the Coalition Academy had been the first time in her life she was surrounded by people who were not, in some sense, breakable by accident. And then, in the very first week, she had let her guard down for one moment, in a classroom argument that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things, and it had ended with someone's bone broken anyway. She said that was the part that upset her the most. Not that I had provoked her, but that even here, even in a place meant to be safe, she had still hurt someone without trying to. I told her the truth then. I told her it had been entirely my fault, that I had pushed her first, swung first, and kept swinging, even after she asked me to stop. I told her that breaking my wrist had probably been the only way to actually get through to me in that moment, because I had not been listening to words. She almost smiled at that. It was the first time I had seen anything close to warmth on her face since I had met her. After that conversation, things between us slowly changed. I started sitting near her during lessons, not because I felt sorry for her, but because I found her genuinely interesting once I stopped being an idiot around her. She was sharp in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. She solved problems in navigation class faster than anyone else, because she was used to calculating margins of error, where a small mistake could mean serious consequences. She understood risk in a way the rest of us, raised on comfortable worlds, simply did not. A month later, the Academy held a joint field exercise with several other classes, a simulated rescue mission on a training moon with slightly higher gravity than most of us were used to, though nowhere close to what Vela had grown up with. For the rest of us, it was exhausting. Every step felt heavier, every lift felt harder, and by the halfway point, half the class was struggling to keep pace with the mission timeline. Vela was not struggling at all. For the first time since I had known her, I watched her move without holding anything back, carrying equipment that would have taken 2 or 3 of us together, moving across difficult terrain like it was nothing, and instead of standing back, she used that ability to help everyone else. She carried supplies for the students who were falling behind. She helped lift a piece of equipment that had gotten stuck between 2 rocks, something the instructors later admitted would have taken a full team working with mechanical lifters to move otherwise. The other students stopped seeing her strength as something frightening and started seeing it as something remarkable, something that made her uniquely capable of doing things the rest of us simply could not. By the end of that exercise, students from 3 different classes were asking her questions, not with nervousness, but with genuine curiosity, wanting to know what else Kuran 9 had taught her that might be useful to learn. I noticed something else too, something that took me longer to understand. Vela had spent her whole life being told, in one way or another, that she was too much, too strong, too careful, too controlled, too different from the people around her to ever fully relax. And here, finally, in this strange mixed classroom full of beings from a dozen different worlds, she was starting to be seen not as too much, but as exactly enough. Maybe even as an advantage. Toward the end of that semester, Director Osa called a small group of us in for a debrief about the incident from months earlier, mostly for record-keeping purposes. She asked me directly, in front of Vela, whether I had learned anything from what happened. I said yes, and I meant it. I told her I had learned that judging someone by where they came from, without understanding what that place had actually demanded of them, was its own kind of carelessness. I said I had learned that the people who seem the most guarded are often the ones working the hardest to keep everyone else safe. Director Osa turned to Vela and asked if she had anything to add. Vela was quiet for a moment, then said that she had spent her whole life assuming she would always be the dangerous one in any room, the person others needed protecting from. She said this was the first time she had been somewhere long enough to realize that being strong did not have to mean being feared. It could mean being useful, being trusted, even being liked, if she let people close enough to actually know her, instead of just being afraid of her. I do not think either of us expected that conversation to matter as much as it did, but it stayed with me long after that semester ended. I still have a small mark on my wrist, faint now, from where the bone had been set and healed. It does not hurt anymore. If anything, I think of it now as a strange kind of reminder, not of a mistake, though it certainly was one, but of the moment I actually started paying attention to someone instead of making assumptions about them. Vela and I ended up in several more classes together over the following terms. She never became loud or easily excitable. That was simply not who she was. But she stopped sitting alone at the edges of rooms. She started training with other students who wanted to understand controlled strength instead of raw force. And she became something like an unofficial instructor for a handful of us who wanted to learn what real discipline looked like. I think about that first week a lot, the version of me who thought a joke about someone's home planet was harmless, who thought pushing someone who had just apologized was a reasonable response to embarrassment. I was wrong about almost everything that day, except for one thing. I was right that there was something worth knowing about Vela Ashcroft. I just went about finding it out in entirely the wrong way, and I paid for that with a broken wrist and a lesson I never forgot. The version of the story that spread around the academy afterward usually focused on the strength readouts, the 11% figure, the idea that a quiet girl from a Deathworld colony could have seriously hurt any of us and chose every day not to. That part was true, and it was impressive, but the part that mattered most to me was smaller than that. It was the look on her face right after the desk cracked, before any of the chaos started, when she looked at her own hand like she did not recognize what it had just done. That was not the look of someone dangerous. That was the look of someone who had spent her whole life terrified of exactly this happening, and it finally had, in the one place she had hoped she would never have to worry about it again. We do not choose where we are born. We do not choose the gravity that shapes our bones, or the air that shapes our lungs, or the animals that teach us, sometimes violently, how careful we need to be, simply to survive childhood. Vela did not choose Kuran 9 any more than I chose my soft, gentle homeworld. But she chose, every single day after that, to keep showing up to a classroom full of people different from her, to keep holding back the vast majority of what she was capable of, simply so the rest of us could feel safe standing next to her. That is not weakness. I understand now that it might be one of the strongest things a person can choose to do.